Nobody warned me that the Velkai didn't have a word for asterisk seasoning. I found that out the hard way, on my 4th day aboard Galactic Exchange Station Veltura, when I tried to explain to the station's head of nutrition compliance, a towering, gray-skinned man named Instructor Boral, that the food being served in the communal mess hall was, by any reasonable measure, inedible. He had looked at me with the expression of someone who had discovered a very small, very confident insect standing on their boot. "The nutrient ratios are precise," he said, in that flat, carrying Velkai accent that made everything sound like a verdict. "The caloric requirements are met. The molecular structure of the proteins has been optimized for 12 species digestion." "Right," I said. "But it tastes like gray." "Color is not a flavor." "I know that. I'm saying it tastes the way gray asterisk looks." He had filed a complaint against me before I made it back to my bunk. "My name is Dax Corin. I'm 29 years old, human, and I had spent the last 7 years working as a food technician aboard Earth Alliance supply ships before the exchange program recruited me. The program's pitch had been simple: bring human culinary knowledge to the outer stations, foster cross-species appreciation through food, build bridges one meal at a time. It had sounded, frankly, wonderful. What they had neglected to mention was that Veltura Station was run almost entirely by Velkai, a warrior caste species who had organized their civilization around efficiency, combat readiness, and the total elimination of anything they considered asterisk unnecessary. The Velkai had solved hunger 200 years ago. They had done it by engineering nutrient slurries that delivered everything a body needed in 40 seconds, twice a day. They had not solved it by making it asterisk good. So when the exchange program placed me on Veltura and assigned me to the cross-species integration initiative, specifically, to run a voluntary cooking demonstration for any station residents interested in attending, I had arrived full of hope. And I had been systematically disassembled by Instructor Boral every single day since. The man hated me. Not me personally, I think. He hated the idea of me. He hated that the exchange program had sent someone whose job was to argue, essentially, that food could be more than fuel. To the Velkai, that argument was not just wrong, it was vaguely insulting. The way suggesting that warriors might enjoy flower arranging would be insulting. Food was function. The idea that a human might come aboard and suggest otherwise was, to Boral, a small but genuine threat. And he was very good at making that clear. On day 1, he had moved my assigned demonstration kitchen to a storage corridor off the secondary loading dock, technically still a kitchen, in that it had a counter and a water line, but located approximately as far from the station's main communal hall as it was possible to get without stepping outside into space. On day 2, he had circulated an announcement that the cooking demonstration would be mandatory for no one, and that attendance would not be logged, credited, or in any way professionally beneficial to attend. On day 3, he had scheduled the demonstration slot at 3:40 hours, the dead center of the station's sleep cycle. I showed up at 3:40 anyway. I set up my equipment. I waited an hour. Then I packed everything up and went to bed. On day 4, I filed my complaint about the mess hall food. On day 5, he filed his counter-complaint about me. That was how I ended up, on day 6, standing in front of the station's conflict integration officer, a tired-looking Thulin with 3 eye stalks, and the energy of someone who had been dealing with people like me and Boral for their entire career, being told that the two of us would be given a formal opportunity to resolve our disagreement. "There is a cross-species cultural exchange event scheduled for this station in 11 days, the officer said, reading from a data tablet. "Station-wide, mandatory attendance for all senior staff, strongly encouraged for all others. Commander Valos is overseeing the security and logistics." She paused. "As part of this event, there will be a communal meal. The question of who prepares that meal and how is now, apparently, a matter of dispute. There is no dispute, Boral said pleasantly. The station nutrition team will prepare the meal as we always do. The human can watch. I looked at the tired officer. Can I have 10 days to prepare a counter-proposal? She looked at both of us. She looked like she would rather be literally anywhere else. You have 11 days, she said. Boral, you have 11 days. The station's Cultural Exchange Committee will evaluate both proposals on the morning of the event and select one. Commander Valos will have final authority as event lead. Boral smiled at me. It was a thin smile, the kind that was already in his mind a foregone conclusion. He outranked me. He had the resources of the station nutrition department behind him. He had 11 assistants and a fully equipped professional kitchen. I had a storage corridor, a single burner, and 11 days. Fine, I said. Part 2, Commander Valos. I had seen Commander Asharon Valos twice before the conflict integration meeting, both times from a distance. The first time, she had been walking through the station's main thoroughfare with a detail of security officers, all of them moving in that particular Velkai way, economical, deliberate, like a current of water finding its path. She was tall, the way all Velkai were tall, with the characteristic deep gray skin and the elongated, high-set eyes that picked up light at the edges, flaring silver when she turned her head. Her hair was worn in a severe cord down her back, black as engine oil, and she moved like she was already 3 steps into the decision she hadn't made yet. I had thought authority. The second time, she had walked past my storage corridor kitchen while I was unloading supplies. She had stopped in the doorway for approximately 4 seconds, surveyed the space, surveyed me, and then continued walking without saying anything. I had thought, she doesn't think I should be here. The third time I saw her was in the Conflict Integration Officer's waiting room, where I found her reviewing a data slate while Boral explained at length why my presence on the station was a disruption to operational efficiency. She didn't look up while he talked. She turned a page on her data slate. She turned another page. Then, after Boral had been speaking for approximately 4 minutes, she said, without looking up, "Corin the human." "Yes, Commander." "You filed a complaint about the mess hall food." "I did." "What specifically?" "It has no taste." She looked up then. Her eyes were a pale metallic silver, the lighter variety, which I had learned meant warrior caste, high rank. She looked at me the way you might look at something that had just said something unexpected. Not unpleasant, just unexpected. "Taste is subjective," she said. "With respect, Commander, the mess hall food doesn't have enough flavor for taste to be asterisk anything, subjective or otherwise." Boral made a noise of offense. Valos watched me for a moment longer, then she looked back at her data slate. 11 days, she said. Don't waste them. I did not know at the time whether that was directed at me, at Boral, or at both of us. I chose to take it as encouragement. Part 3, the problem with fire. Here is the thing about Veltura Station that nobody mentions in the exchange program briefing materials. It is, despite being an advanced galactic transit hub with technology capable of folding space across 17 light years, almost entirely fireproof. Not by accident, by design. The Velkai had, during the early centuries of their space program, lost several stations to fire. They had responded to this the way the Velkai responded to most problems, with total, systematic elimination. Every material aboard Veltura was fire-resistant. Every work surface was non-flammable. Every vent and atmosphere processing system was calibrated to suppress combustion within 0.8 seconds of detection. This was excellent for safety. This was catastrophic for cooking. I discovered this on day 1 of my 11-day preparation window, when I attempted to light the burner I had brought from my personal kit, a small, portable unit, nothing dramatic. and triggered a station-wide atmosphere alert that sent 12 security officers and 4 damage control teams to my storage corridor within 90 seconds. Commander Valos was among them. She was the first through the door. She looked at my burner. She looked at me. She looked at the 12 security officers who had arrived behind her, all of them in tactical gear, all of them ready for a crisis that was, in fact, a human trying to boil water. "Stand down," she said. The security team relaxed, very slightly, in the way that security teams relax when they are deeply relieved, but also feel they should not show it. "What," Valos said to me, "are you doing?" "Cooking," I said, "or trying to." "You triggered a station emergency protocol." "I know, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the suppression systems were that sensitive." She picked up the burner. She turned it over once. She had the expression of someone encountering a piece of equipment that should, by rights, not exist aboard a modern vessel. "This generates an open flame," she said. "Yes." "For what purpose?" "Heat caramelization, Maillard reaction, smoke compounds, the flavor profile." "Corin." "Yes." "Why does food require fire?" I thought about how to answer this. The Velkai used precision electromagnetic heating, clean, controllable, odorless. It did exactly what it was told. It did not brown or char or smoke or caramelize. It did not produce the 1,000 tiny chemical reactions that happened when organic material met open flame. It produced hot food. That was all. "It doesn't require it," I said. "But fire does things to food that nothing else does. It changes the chemistry. It creates compounds that don't exist in unheated ingredients. It produces flavors they're complex. They're layered. They trigger responses in almost every species with an olfactory system, because fire and food have been connected for as long as there's been life that cooks." Valos was quiet. She was looking at the burner, not at me. "Most species," she said finally. "Humans, Thula and Keth Murrin. Your species has an olfactory system, I looked it up. You're capable of detecting the compounds that—" "Our olfactory system is used to detect threats," she said flatly. "Predators, toxins, environmental hazards." "Right," I said. "And in a very real sense, food that smells good is just your threat detection system being hijacked by something safe. The brain interprets the signal as, this matters. That's why the smell of food cooking is compelling even when you don't think you're hungry." She looked at me then. Really looked at me, the way she had in the waiting room, like I had said something she hadn't expected. "You cannot use an open flame aboard this station," she said. "I know." I was hoping to ask about alternatives. A very long pause. Around us, the 12 security officers maintained a professional silence that was also, somehow, curious. "What alternatives?" Valos said. "A controlled combustion space. An enclosed fire pit setup. Something with atmosphere isolation so the suppression system doesn't trigger. I've done the math. It's possible to create a sealed cooking environment that generates real flame heat and smoke without putting the station at risk. I'd need maybe 30 cubic meters of space, an independent atmosphere feed, and a containment field on the venting." She stared at me. "You want me to authorize a fire pit on my station?" "A very small, very safe, very controlled fire pit." "For the purpose of cooking food?" "Yes." Another very long pause. "Request denied," she said. She set down the burner and turned to leave. "Commander," she stopped. I said carefully, "Can I ask why?" "Because it is unnecessary. Because our nutrition systems are adequate. Because the risk, however small, does not justify the outcome." "The outcome being?" "A meal that tastes different from what we already provide." She said different the way Velkai said most things, not with contempt exactly, but with a flatness that suggested the distinction was not meaningful. "Corin, I read your program file. Your species cooked with fire for most of your evolutionary history." That is a cultural artifact, not a nutritional necessity. This station runs on nutritional necessity. And the cultural exchange event, I said. She paused. The whole point of the event, I said, keeping my voice very even, is cross-species cultural exchange. I understand that your nutrition systems are adequate. I understand that Velkai food culture is built around function. But I was sent here to show something different, not better, not superior, just different. If the only food at a cultural exchange event is the same nutrient slurry the station serves every other day, what exactly are we exchanging? Valos said nothing. I'm not asking to compromise the station, I said. I'm asking for 30 cubic meters and a containment field. If it goes wrong at any stage, you can shut it down and I'll eat Boral's gray paste with everyone else. But give me a chance to actually do what I was sent here to do. A very long silence. The security officers were definitely not making eye contact with each other. 7 days, Valos said at last. I will have an engineering team assess the feasibility of a contained combustion space. If they clear it, you get your fire pit. If they don't, I'll work within the station's existing systems. I understand. She left without another word, but she left the burner on my counter. Part 4, 7 days. The engineering assessment came back on day 3, approved with 17 conditions. I accepted all 17 conditions without complaint, which I suspected surprised Commander Valos, because she came to inspect the setup herself on day 4. They had given me a corner of the station's secondary cargo bay, a high-ceilinged space with exposed structure and good vertical clearance, which was exactly what I needed. The engineering team had installed a containment field generator around a 30-square-meter area, with its own dedicated atmosphere feed and a separate venting shaft that bypassed the main suppression system. Inside the containment boundary, I could generate fire. Outside it, the station's systems continued as normal. I had spent day 3 building the fire pit. Not a professional kitchen setup. Not the kind of sleek, integrated equipment that Boral's team used. A fire pit, stone and metal, designed to hold real wood-burning fuel, to generate real smoke, to produce the kind of ambient, radiating heat that you feel in your chest before you feel it on your skin. I had requisitioned materials from the station's maintenance stores. Fire-grade composite blocks, a metal grate, ventilation baffles, and through an exchange program supply order that had taken 6 hours to approve, 200 kilograms of actual hardwood fuel, shipped from Earth at a cost that I chose not to think about too carefully. Valos came in at the end of day 4, when I had just finished the basic assembly. She stood at the containment boundary and looked at it. Her silver eyes moved over the fire pit, the stacked fuel, the prep surfaces I had arranged around it. She said nothing for a long time. It looks like something from a historical document, she said finally. It is, I said, more or less. Humans have been building something roughly like this for 100,000 years. What do you intend to cook? A lot of things. I had spent the first 3 days researching every species represented on Veltura Station, 14 species in total, ranging from the Velkai themselves to a small Keth diplomatic delegation, to a handful of Murin engineers and a Thulen security consultant. I had cross-referenced dietary requirements, flavor sensitivities, known preferences, known aversions. I had built a menu that was technically a single meal, but had been designed to work across every pallet in the room. But the core of it is this. I'm going to light this fire tomorrow morning, and I'm going to let it burn for 2 days. Valos looked at me. 2 days. Low heat, slow build. The smoke has to get into the walls of the space, into the air. Slow-cooked things can't be rushed. The event is in 4 days. By the time I'm serving, the food will have been cooking for 48 hours. That seems inefficient, she said. It seems inefficient, I agreed. But the result is different from anything you can produce in 40 seconds. That's the whole point. She was quiet again. She had, I'd noticed, a quality of silence that was different from most people's silence. Most people, when they go quiet, are either thinking or waiting. Valos's silences felt like both at once, layered, like she was processing several things simultaneously and choosing, very deliberately, what to show. Boral's team has finalized their proposal, she said. 14 nutrient-optimized dishes, each calibrated to the dietary profile of a different species aboard the station. Comprehensive, documented, approved by station health protocols. I know, I said, he told me. He also told me that your proposal represents an unnecessary fire risk, a sanitation concern, and a cultural imposition that assumes human food practices are universally appealing, when in fact they are species-specific. I nodded. He's not entirely wrong about the last part. Some of what I'm doing is going to be more appealing to some species than others, but I stopped. I thought about what to say next. Commander, have you ever smelled something cooking over a wood fire? She looked at me. No. Then you don't know yet whether Boral is right about the species-specific part. Another long pause. Don't give me a reason to shut it down, she said and walked away. I lit the fire the next morning. Part 5, what fire does. For the first 6 hours, no one came near the cargo bay. I had not expected them to. The smell would reach the ventilation corridors before it reached anyone directly, would smoke first, then the early Maillard compounds as I put the first prep layers over the heat, then the deeper, richer aromatics as the smoke became established and the fat and sugar reactions began to build. It was not dramatic. It was slow. That was the point. On hour 7, a Keth engineer stopped at the cargo bay entrance. He stood at the containment boundary. He couldn't cross it. It was locked to station personnel except me and the engineering oversight team, and looked at the fire. His species had 4 nostrils, arrayed in a vertical line below a narrow face, and all 4 were working. He looked uncertain about what he was feeling about what his nostrils were doing. What is that? He said. Smoke, I said. Wood smoke and the early stages of some prep work. Mirepoix, that's aromatics, root vegetables cooked slow in fat, the base layer of flavor. It smells, he stopped. He seemed to be searching for the word and coming up slightly short of it. I know, I said. Old, he said finally. It smells old, like it has a weight to it. That's the wood smoke. It carries compounds that don't have a human name yet, honestly. We just call them the smell of fire. But the science is that they're complex organic molecules that bind to olfactory receptors in most known species and trigger. I wasn't asking for the science, the Keth engineer said. He was still standing at the boundary, still with all 4 nostrils working. I was just saying it smells old. Like something I should know about. He stayed for 20 minutes. He didn't talk. He just stood there and eventually, quietly, he left. 2 hours later, he was back. He had brought 3 other Keth engineers. By hour 12, I had a loose cluster of visitors at the cargo bay boundary, Keth, Murren, 2 Thulin. None of them had been invited. None of them were saying much. They were just there, in the way that people are there when something is happening that they don't fully understand but also don't want to miss. I kept working. The smoke was established by now, deep in the air of the sealed space, and the prep work had moved past aromatics into the longer processes. A long bone broth that would cook for 30 hours, a protein-rich ragu built for Velkai dietary requirements but seasoned for Velkai olfactory triggers. Less sweetness, more mineral sharpness, smoke and char notes they would register as alertness signals rather than comfort ones. For the Keth, spiced grain layers, slow toasted, with fat-soluble compounds that their species process differently from most. For the Murren, a fermented vegetable base that I'd been building for 4 days, sour, bright, and complex, in a way their flavor receptors responded strongly to. On hour 14, Commander Valos came back. She stopped at the boundary with her hands behind her back, the way she always stood, controlled, upright, that Velkai posture that looked military even at rest. She looked at the crowd of curious onlookers. She looked at me. "You have an audience," she said. I noticed. I didn't authorize this as a public demonstration. No one authorized it as a public demonstration. People just started showing up. I kept my hands moving. I was working the broth, skimming the surface, keeping the heat even. I can ask them to leave if you want. Valos looked at the cluster of Keth and Murin and Thulin standing quietly at her station's cargo bay entrance, watching a human cook over a fire. She was quiet for a moment. "Don't ask them to leave," she said. She stayed for 40 minutes. She didn't speak again, but she stayed. Part 6, Boral. Boral found out about the crowd on day 8, 2 days before the event. I heard about his response secondhand, from Keth engineer Tessani, who had become a regular visitor to the cargo bay and who had, by day 7, started asking me what I was doing and why, with the focused curiosity of someone taking notes. He filed a new complaint, Tessani told me, perched at the edge of the containment boundary with all 4 nostrils happily engaged. Said the gathering at the cargo bay represents an unregistered social assembly in a controlled station zone and constitutes a distraction from operational duties. "Is that a real rule?" I asked. "Probably," Tessani said cheerfully. "Most rules are real. The question is whether Commander Valos enforces it." I found out the answer at hour 6 of day 9, when Boral arrived at the cargo bay with a data tablet, 2 junior nutrition staff, and the energy of a man who had already won. "Corin," he said, standing at the boundary with his hands at his sides and his chin at an angle that communicated satisfaction. "I've reviewed the station protocols regarding unregistered public demonstrations in cargo zones. What you're doing here is in violation of." "Boral," said Commander Valos. She had come in behind him, silently, the way she always moved. Boral turned. He had approximately a quarter of a second to recalibrate from triumphant to cautious. "Commander," he said, I'm aware of what you were just doing," Valos said. "I read the same protocols you did." She looked at the data tablet. "You are correct that this constitutes an unregistered public gathering in a controlled zone." Boral straightened. "I am therefore formally registering it," Valos said, "as a pre-event cultural exchange demonstration. Event code filed. Security clearance granted. Observation permitted within the boundary markers." She looked at me. "Are you expecting anyone else?" I looked at the crowd. It had grown over the last 2 days to approximately 30 people, a cross-section of Veltura's population, drawn by the smell and by word of mouth and by the particular human instinct, which it turned out was not exclusively human, to gather around a fire. "A few more Velkai maybe," I said. "I'll note it as open to station personnel," she said. Boral stared at her. His mouth did not open. He was Velkai enough to know when a line had been drawn. "The Cultural Exchange Committee meets tomorrow morning," he said finally with control, "to select the meal format." "I know," Valos said. "I'll be there." Boral left. Valos didn't. She crossed the containment boundary, the first time she had, and came to stand near the fire pit. The heat reached her before anything else did. She stood very still in it, the way someone stands in the first warmth after being cold. "What is in the pot?" she said. "Broth, 60 hours slow fire, roasted bone aromatics mineral reduction." I watched her. "Velkai dietary profile but with smoke compounds that should register on your system as there's not really a clean word. Alert, alive, like something worth paying attention to." She looked at the fire. Her silver eyes caught the light from it, actual firelight, amber and jumping, nothing like the station's clean fluorescence. For a moment she was lit differently, warm-toned. Her gray skin picked up a faint copper undertone in the firelight that I hadn't seen before. "You built this entire thing," she said slowly, "because the food here tasted like gray." "That's the short version, yes." "That is," she stopped. She seemed to be deciding how to finish the sentence. "That is either an extraordinary amount of effort or an extraordinary amount of stubbornness." "Probably both," I said. Something happened at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. Velkai didn't smile the way humans did, a full curved mouth thing. But there was a shift in her expression that I was starting to learn to read, a softening just fractional at the outer edge of her eyes. "What does it taste like?" she said, quietly, not a challenge, genuinely asking. I picked up a ladle. I poured a small amount of the broth into a clean cup. I handed it to her across the fire pit. She held it for a moment. She looked at it the way you look at something you're not sure about. Then she lifted it and drank. The silence was complete. "That," she said, "is not what I expected." "What did you expect?" She thought about it. "I expected the smell. I expected something that registered as asterisk notable. I did not expect it to." She stopped again. "Velkai do not have a culinary vocabulary," she said after a moment. "We have nutritional descriptors. I don't have words for what that is." "Try." She was quiet for a long time. "It tastes like" a pause. "It tastes like it has memory in it," she said finally. "Like it knows how it was made." I didn't say anything for a moment. "That," I said, "is the best description of slow-cooked food I have ever heard." Her expression shifted again, more than a fractional softening this time. "Don't tell Boral I said that," she said. She set the cup down and walked to the boundary. She paused before she crossed it. "I'll be at the committee meeting tomorrow, Corin." "I know. Don't give me a reason to choose him." She left. I turned back to the fire. The broth was simmering, steady, patient, 60 hours of work in a copper-warm cargo bay. I had 1 day left. Part 7, the morning of the event. The Cultural Exchange Committee met at 800. It was a small group: the station director, a Thulen cultural liaison, a Murin representative, Boral, and 2 of his senior staff, Commander Valos and me. They had set up in the station director's office, which was clinical and cold and smelled of nothing at all. Boral presented first. He was thorough, professional, and absolutely correct about everything except the one thing that mattered. His 14 dishes were nutritionally optimized, species calibrated, and safe. His presentation had charts. The charts were good. He looked at Valos once, at the end, with the quiet confidence of a man who believed the outcome was already decided. I presented second. I had no charts. I had a small tray of samples, 3 cups of broth, calibrated for the 3 most represented species in the committee room. I said, I would like to make one argument, and then let the food make the rest. I put the cups on the table. The Thulen cultural liaison drank first. She held the cup for a moment after she set it down, with an expression that was hard to read across species. Then she said, quietly, "This is different." Not asterisk better, just asterisk different. That was all I needed. The Murin representative drank. He said something to the Murin beside him, quiet and rapid in their own language, and whatever it was made the other Murin lean forward and look at the remaining cups. The station director drank. She said nothing, but she looked at Boral and then at Valos. Valos didn't drink. She had already tasted it. She looked at me, and she looked at Boral, and then she said, with the flat, final weight of a Velkai commander who has made a decision, "Corin's proposal is approved. The communal meal will be served from the cargo bay demonstration space. Boral's team will assist with logistics, service, and dietary accommodation for any species whose profile requires modification." Boral went still. "This is not," he said carefully, "in keeping with station nutritional protocols." "I'm revising the protocols for this event," Valos said, as event lead, as I was authorized to do. Commander. Boral, a pause very short. The food has memory in it, yours does not, she stood. We have 8 hours, I suggest we use them. Part 8, the fire that fed everyone. I had been awake for 36 hours by the time the event started. The cargo bay had been transformed over those 36 hours, not by me alone, but by the gradual accumulation of people who had come to watch and had stayed to help. Tessani and his Keth engineers had built additional serving surfaces from maintenance materials, clean and functional and low to the ground in the Keth style. The 2 Thulin had consulted with me on the Murren fermented preparation, and then, unprompted, had added a Thulin spiced oil I hadn't heard of, which, when I tasted it, made my eyes go wide, and which I immediately incorporated into the menu. A Murren engineer had spent 4 hours sitting beside the fire pit, not cooking, just being there, and eventually told me that Murren gather around fire to tell stories, that it is the oldest social technology their species has, and that they hadn't sat beside a real fire in 6 years. By the time the first guests arrived, the cargo bay smelled like every species on the station had contributed something. Because they had. I stood by the fire pit and served. That was my job. The cook doesn't get to eat until everyone else has eaten, and even then only barely, because the cook's job doesn't end with the last dish. I watch people file into the space, watch them stop just inside the entrance and go still the way people go still when they smell something that tells them this matters. Watch the clusters form and the conversations start in languages I didn't speak but could read in posture and expression. Boral came. I had not expected him to. He stood at the back of the crowd with his arms at his sides, and I watched him watch the room, and eventually I saw something change in his face. Not capitulation, not warmth, nothing so simple as that. Just a kind of recognition. The recognition of a man who has been wrong about something and knows it, and isn't ready to say so yet. That was enough. Commander Valos arrived near the end of the first serving. The crowd parted for her the way crowds do for Velkai commanders, not out of fear exactly, but out of a kind of automatic acknowledgement of weight. She moved through it without looking at me, accepting a bowl from one of the serving volunteers, finding a place near the wall. I was managing 3 things at once: the fire pit heat, the final grain layer for the Keth second course, a broth refill, when I noticed she had come closer. She was standing just at the edge of the fire pit, out of the way, holding her bowl. The firelight was on her face again. "How long have you been awake?" she asked. "Don't worry about it," I said. That is a very human answer to a question about your physical state. "Approximately 37 hours," I said. "I'm fine. I'll sleep when everyone's fed." She was quiet. She looked at the fire pit. She looked at the room, the cross-species gathering, the noise, the smell, the way the light from the fire reached out and changed the quality of the space. "It is not what I expected," she said, almost to herself. "What did you expect?" "I expected a demonstration, something contained, something that said, 'This is what humans do with food, observe and return to your duties.'" A pause. "This is not that." "No," I said. "This is," she seemed to weigh the word, "communal." It changed the room. It made the room different before anyone sat down in it, because of the smell, because of the fire. People came here expecting to observe something, and instead she stopped. "Stayed," I said. "Stayed," she agreed. I kept working. After a moment she said, "My species used fire." I looked up. "Early history," she said. "Before the nutrition systems, before space travel, we hunted and we used fire to cook what we caught. We did not keep the cultural memory of it the way humans apparently do. We moved past it when efficiency permitted, but the biology is still there." She looked at the fire. "When I drank the broth last night, the response I had, it was not intellectual. It was not 'this is nutritionally interesting.' It was," she searched for the word, "older than that." That's what I was trying to tell you, I said quietly. When I said fire does things nothing else does, it's not about the compounds, not really. It's about what the compounds unlock. The memory your species has for this isn't gone. It's just dormant. She looked at me over the fire pit. The light was between us, amber and alive. Boral was not entirely wrong, she said. Your methods are a fire risk. Your approach is inefficient. It produces inconsistency that nutritional optimization systems are specifically designed to prevent. I know, I said. And it produces this. She gestured very slightly at the room. Yes. Another long silence. Somewhere behind us, a cluster of Keth and Murren were in what appeared to be an animated conversation, plates in hand, in a mix of their two languages. A Thulin had gone back for thirds of the fermented vegetable preparation. Boral was standing with his arms still at his sides, but someone had given him a bowl, and he was eating it. I am going to recommend to the station director, Valos said slowly, that the cultural exchange program be extended and that you be allocated a proper kitchen space, not a storage corridor. I looked at her, thank you. Don't thank me. It is a practical decision. Today demonstrated that the fire is not a risk when properly managed, and that the social cohesion value of communal food preparation significantly exceeds the efficiency costs. She paused. Also, the broth was excellent, and I would like to have it again. I laughed. I hadn't meant to, it came out of me on its own, the honest, involuntary kind. She looked at me with an expression that was new, one I hadn't catalogued yet, surprised slightly and not displeased. That is a Velkai compliment, she said. I would like to have it again. We do not say things we don't mean. I know, I said. That's the best kind of compliment there is. She stood a little longer, and then she looked back at the fire. The thing I had fought for, the 30 cubic meters and the containment field and the 200 kilograms of hardwood and the 37 sleepless hours, the thing that tasted like memory and smelled like something old and true. Corin, she said. Commander. When you have slept, a pause that was careful and very deliberate. The station has a secondary observation deck. It has a view of the star field. I am on duty there at 1900 hours on alternating days. She did not look at me. If you wish to eat something that did not taste like gray. She stopped. She had said enough. The Velkai did not elaborate. They said what they meant and trusted you to hear it. I'll find something worth cooking, I said. She nodded once and walked away through the crowd. The fire burned behind me, steady and warm and patient, the way fires do when they've been built right, the way anything does, when you've given it what it needs. Epilogue. 3 months later, the storage corridor was a kitchen. Not a large kitchen, 6 stations, a proper venting system, and in the center of it, enclosed in its containment field, a fire pit built from the same composite blocks as the original. The engineering team had given it a proper atmosphere feed this time, and a ventilation shaft with a sensor array so complex it had taken 2 weeks to calibrate. Boral had signed off on the installation. He had done it in the same way he did most things, efficiently, without ceremony, and with the quiet acknowledgement of a man who has updated his understanding of something and has chosen to integrate the update rather than resist it. He hadn't apologized. He hadn't needed to. We had instead arrived at a professional equilibrium that was almost, in its own way, respectful. The kitchen was open to any station resident who wanted to come and learn. Some came once out of curiosity and didn't return. Some came back every time. Tessani came every time and had become, somewhat to everyone's surprise, an excellent baker of Keth grain breads, which he produced in quantities large enough to share with the entire engineering bay and which smelled, from the corridor outside, extraordinary. There were 14 species on Veltura Station. On any given evening, 4 or 5 of them were in the kitchen. I cooked dinner for Commander Valos for the first time on a Tuesday, on the secondary observation deck, with a portable setup and a small flame-safe unit. And the star field through the window doing what the star field always does when you're making something for someone, making it feel like the right size for the moment. She said very little during the meal. That was fine. The Velkai ate in a focused silence that I had stopped reading as indifference and started reading as respect, for the food, for the effort behind it, for the someone who had made it. When she was done, she set down her utensil and was quiet for a moment. "It has memory in it," she said. "Yes," I said. "This one tastes like," she thought about it. "This one tastes like something I haven't found the word for yet." "That's all right," I said. "We have time." The stars burned behind her. The fire, small and steady and contained, burned between us. Neither of us was in any hurry. End. Story parameters log **. Title: Cooking Class Challenge Gone Wrong. Human lights a fire pit and feeds everyone HFY Reddit tales. Film Seed. Blood and Water II. Book of Z 2022. Loyalty tested, unlikely alliance forged under pressure. Protagonist protects found family while rivals scheme. Human narrator type: civilian cook/food technician. Alien female role: warrior commander skeptic who melts. Engine: C. Misjudgment reversal plus a feeds everyone right arrow devotion. Setting: alien station/cargo bay right arrow kitchen. Obstacle: rival alien instructor Boral plus institutional prejudice against human methods. Mood: comedic humiliation right arrow, quiet competence right arrow, charged slow burn right arrow, triumphant vindication. Ending: her people recalibrate on humanity. She chooses him openly, understated Velkai style. Stream: romantic adult, suggestive slow burn, no explicit content, fade to black implied. Approximate word count: ~9 800 words, ~61 minutes at 160 WPM.